Hey, what's up? Hello, everyone. Welcome into Fantasy Filmball, the show where we turn movies into sports and sports into something we don't talk about here. My name is Matt.
And my name is Dyl. Today we are going to go over, I think, what most people would consider their most anticipated movie for the rest of the year, Martin Scorsese's brand new film, Killers of the Flower Moon. We finally have a trailer for it. But before we dive into this, comment down below what you're anticipating about this movie and drop a subscription because we're going to be talking Oscar news each and every week. But Matt, general thoughts here.
Yeah, I think it looks great. I mean, I've maybe been a little bit less high on this movie just on a personal level, mostly just because Scorsese's last few films haven't been amazing for me. I've really liked them, but like The Irishman, for example, I think is like in every single category at the 2019 Oscars, it was my least favorite nominee. Every single category that it was in. I still liked it, just to be clear. I did, but I found it to be not as much of like a revelation as everyone else did. So I've kind of been expecting the same from Killers, especially because I read the script a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and I thought the script was boring as hell. Apparently they've rewritten it, but I did not find Killers of Flower Moon script to be very intriguing. What are your first thoughts, first takeaways on Killers of the Flower Moon here?
I really dug this trailer. I know I've kind of talked in the past about my appreciation for Robbie Robertson's contributions to Scorsese's movies, and I think the score here sounds very, very good, and maybe this will be his time to finally get recognized because he is not won an Academy Award for ever working with Scorsese, and I feel like eventually he's got to get something. But overall, I liked Leo's voice. I thought there was a lot of cool shots throughout, and I was a little surprised that everyone said like, oh no, Jesse Plemons is the lead, yet he maybe has like 2 frames of this whole trailer.
Well, in the script that I read and in the book that this is based on, Jesse Plemons' character Tom White is the lead. He is the lawman that comes in to solve the problem, but apparently as they were kind of breaking the script, as they were going through draft after draft, this is why I say the script I read has apparently changed a ton to what the final movie is. They realized that the core of the story is not Tom White solving the crime. It's instead the question of the love story at the center between Leonardo DiCaprio's Ernest character and Lily Gladstone's Molly. They really shifted it so that Leonardo DiCaprio is the lead. Plemons, De Niro are supporting, and Gladstone could be either.
So we're going to dive into some of our feelings with possible nominations throughout this. Just keep in mind, we are reacting to the trailer right after it's been seen. Since we've recorded this before it gets published, people have actually watched this movie, so there's been more eyes and more comments on this, but this is just a trailer reaction in terms of where we think it could get Oscar nominations, because I feel like at the end of the day, even if this movie bombs in terms of total nominations, I feel like Picture's probably going to be safe. Like Fabelmans, like Mank, it's the early frontrunner that just coasts by all season long.
Totally. I think that this looks like it looks like an incredible film from this trailer. It looks very artfully done. Martin Scorsese knows how to spend money. So the direction, the scope of this project looks pretty awesome, and I think that it has, I wouldn't call it a total lock, but I would say it's probably like a 95% lock for picture and director in terms of nominations. Now I will say, I've already seen people on Twitter, on Reddit saying, well, we can wrap it up. That's the best picture winner. And I just think back to last year in September when it was the world premiere of The Fabelmans, and David Ehrlich went on Twitter and said, I know we all have to pretend that things aren't wrapped up, but we can all admit that The Fabelmans is just winning Best Picture, right? Which just wasn't the case. And I can foresee the same thing happening for Killers of the Flower Moon, where immediately it's going to be seen, people are going to say this is the best thing ever, and it's definitely going to win Best Picture, right? And then, obviously, like, things just don't happen like that. This is a very dark, very slow, very meditative, 3.5-hour-long movie. Scorsese wants to take his time with things. He wants to build the poetic nature of this story. This is more silence than it is Wolf of Wall Street. So I'm not expecting this to be winning material at the end of the year.
Well, as someone who would say Silence is their favorite Scorsese movie, that makes me very happy to hear. And I mean, you just mentioned their picture director. They seem pretty safe for nominations, and with it being 3.5 hours, there's a lot of time for actors to have screen time. So we have, I would say, 4 possible acting nominations here. So after seeing a trailer to put, a face and visuals to like what you read 2 years ago, does anyone really jump off the page to you, even though DiCaprio is the only one who has any lines of actual dialogue?
DiCaprio sounds kind of goofy, is what I'll say. I mean, I love DiCaprio, but he could go the way of Robert De Niro in The Irishman in this movie. I would say it's very possible he gets nominated. From the script I read, I would say Ernest is not a role that gets nominated at all. But again, the script that I read is not the script that they shot, apparently. DiCaprio is very possible. I am not sure if he'd be in my 5. But then with supporting, I think Lily Gladstone and Robert De Niro both have winning shots. I think that both of them have a very strong argument to win in both of the supporting categories. That said, if Lily Gladstone goes lead, she will not win.
Yeah, I definitely back you up there with Gladstone with the supporting lead argument. While I think lead may not have as many contenders, it has strong contenders, while supporting may have more people in the race, but no one's really jumping off the page like, oh my gosh, they're going to sweep the year in the way that Gladstone could. I've been on the De Niro train for winning supporting actor, so I'm glad to, hear someone else feels like they may have a shot to actually take that award. And I get the whole Leo kind of sounds goofy, but I would make the same case for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where he had a little bit of a goofy voice. It's Leo at the end of the day, and while he took forever to get a win, he usually still got nominated. I know there's a few exceptions here and there, but if his movie was a, giant picture contender outside of Titanic, he usually found his way into the lineup. So I would say this far out, it's safe to have him in your 5, but don't have him number 1 or 2. Have him more like number 3, 4, or 5.
He's not a win contender in this role, I would say. I think that's how I feel overall with a lot of things in this, is that it's not maybe a win contender, but it's very strong for a nomination. It's going to get a lot of top 5s, but a lot of those are not going to be number 1s or number 2s. They're going to be 3, 4, 5s.
A category I know a lot of people at this moment have killers winning is adapted screenplay, where I think you and I are both not have it at number 1, but I can see the angle for why people have it there. But at least looking at the trailer here, it doesn't really scream like, oh my gosh, there's a lot of like dialogue or whatever, but I think it's probably safe for nomination. I mean, Irishman got in even though it won nothing, so I feel like there's no reason for this one not to, unless obviously the movie performs more like Silence, where it's just like strong in like 2 categories, but Silence was a weird exception for Scorsese.
I don't know. Maybe I'm also a little bit poisoned by the fact that I didn't like the script of this movie that I read, but I think that there's going to be something more unique, more charming in this category.
That makes sense, and I can definitely agree with that there at the moment. What is that movie? I'm not sure, but that's the fun of, predicting all the way out here in May. We can't really get a feel for screenplay or really for acting or even editing for that reason from a trailer, but what we can get a feel for is the visuals, like production design, costume design, cinematography. At least to you, do any of those jump off the page to be like, hey, we can win for Lily Gladstone and this, or is it just the 2 supporting acting performances for you at this moment?
I will say the cinematography looks gorgeous. There is a great use of chiaroscuro in this. It's very reminiscent of Caravaggio, which is one of Scorsese's biggest influences. He really draws from painting a lot. So it's looking gorgeous. It's looking like one of the most well-shot Scorsese movies since, I would say, probably Hugo. So I think it's a lock for a cinematography nomination. But that said, does it look prettier than even Oppenheimer from what we've seen? I don't know for sure. I wouldn't say that this is a win contender for cinematography, but goddamn, it looks great.
We said this in our last predictions that we did here on the channel, that Killers and Oppenheimer, while they're not the same movie in terms of like tone, they have a lot of the same elements, with being set in a desert, building their sets from scratch, big name directors, and period pieces. So like, while I don't think they're directly competing on paper, kind of make the angle, especially when you get to like production design. These are 2 period pieces. While they're a different time period, they're still kind of doing the same type of work in a way. I do think cinematography is pretty safe for nomination. I would also lean, after seeing the trailer for this, more Killers than Oppenheimer in terms of production design. Costumes is a place I think could work here for Killers because of the work that will be done on the indigenous cast members, where that will give it the more leg up compared to some of the other competitors in this field. But the tech that I'm more, I guess, interested in is the one I mentioned above, is the score work, where I think this could be the additional win that this movie gets, so it's not just a 1-win movie.
It is possible. Robbie Robertson has done a lot of great work, and he's one of the only indigenous main creatives on this film. So if you're going to reward something about Killers of the Flower Moon, why not reward one of the actual indigenous people making this movie? And Robbie Robertson, being the composer and being indigenous, is a great narrative. It's a great argument for why this could be the winning film for Best Original Score. I think sound is a great bet. I mean, we've got the wind rolling across the Oklahoma plains. We've got explosions, gunshots. It seems like there's going to be a lot of sound design work in this movie. So I do think it could be a duo editing sound nominee.
I do as well. I think sound is pretty safe regardless, and then editing is just, what is the field looking like this year? Because I think editing is the hardest thing to gauge until you actually see a movie, because you can't really get a sense of what editing is like just based on a trailer, because you can cut a trailer one way, the movie's completely different. So I would say at this moment, yeah, definitely throw editing in there for the line of huge nominations this movie could get, and I guess that's the next thing we should dive into. What is this movie's ceiling? I'm looking at 12 as its max. Obviously, it's not going to get 12 nominations. I mean, it could, but that doesn't seem very likely.
No matter what, I think that this gets in at least 2 supporting performances, a screenplay nomination, cinematography. So I would say at the bare minimum between 4 to 6 nominations, but I would say the floor is really 8 nominations and the ceiling is 12 to 13 nominations.
This is I feel like if you're doing what we do here on the show, a draft, this is a very safe early round pick because it has a very, very, very high floor, just like what The Irishman had as well.
It's very safe, but at the same time, it's not very exciting. There's not much range that it can do. This is going to, in our game, clear 1,000 points, but is it going to be that sort of miracle that everyone has been looking for? I am not absolutely certain. I'm sure the reviews from Cannes are saying just that. This is the best movie of the year. This is sure to win Best Picture. But when we hear something like that, it generally means that movie is not, at the very end of the year, going to win Best Picture, because people are ready for it to do just that. They're not going to be excited by it at that point.
Well, my question for all of you out there is, do you think this movie is going to win Best Picture, or do you have it underperforming a little bit? Let us know down below. But until next time, my name is Dyl.
And my name is Matt, and this is Fantasy Filmball.